What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another installment of the MCU Rewatch Reviews series. Today we're talking one of my favorites in the MCU, Thor Ragnarok from November of 2017. As always, welcome back the doc, Chris Mueller at BR underscore the doctor, or excuse me, BR underscore doctor on the Twitter machine. Chris, welcome back as always.
Thanks.
And we got a very special guest that you reached out to him yourself a while ago. We were able to get him here today in his busy schedule. Jeff Johnson from the Bleacher Report crew as well. Jeff, welcome on to Talk Ragnarok today.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and before we go any further, where can people find you on the Twitter machine? I know you're involved in a lot of different projects and whatnot. What you got going on? Where can people find you?
Oh, yeah, man. I'm on all social media at Jeff J Says. If you like pop culture, if you like wrestling, if you like basketball, if you like music, if you like jokes, I give it all to you at different rates, but the same effectiveness.
Good stuff, dude. Good stuff. And you're a Marvel fan as well, talking Ragnarok. I know I asked this before we went live here, but what was it about Ragnarok that really stood out to you as being one of your favorite movies in the MCU?
I think it showed the progression of Thor as a character, one, and as two, of the quality of the movies. Because, the first Thor was all right. The second one wasn't really that good. Mm-hmm. And then when we got to Thor Ragnarok, I didn't have a lot of expectations. The plot interests me, but I just said, okay, I'll go into it with an open mind. I don't know what they're going to do. And for them to make a complete 180, really dig into the qualities that made Thor, the character, endearing on an MCU level, mm-hmm. just injecting that right amount of humor. Like, they leaned into the humor without it being corny. And then I feel like the cast of characters that they had around him for this one, it just all clicked. Mm-hmm. It all clicked. Like, even just looking back on certain parts, it's just hilarious. It's it hits the proper tones of humor and seriousness. And mm-hmm. there's you have these people who disparage Marvel movies for having humor as if it doesn't come from a comic book. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what type of dystopian comics do you read? Like, mm-hmm. there's humor in comics all the time, and I think they were able to translate it well on the big screen.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, with expectations, with the first two films, it's just a totally different feel to this, to Ragnarok, compared to the first two installments of the Thor franchise. And we've talked about those movies before. Chris, we've talked about so many movies up to this point. I'm getting my timeline mixed up. But was it Thor that you liked, or was it Dark World that you were more a fan of? I think it was the first one, right?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a soft spot for the first movie. Okay. The second movie is, it is what it is. Yeah. Best way to describe it. Yeah.
So what
it's
were you
a movie.
So going into Ragnarok, what were you expecting? Were you expecting another more of the same from the Thor franchise, or were you kind of getting your hopes up based off what you saw from, like, the advertising, the promotion, and stuff like that?
Well, I knew a little bit about Taika Waititi going into this, so I knew that it would have a completely different sensibility than the first two movies, so that was exciting to me. But the first trailer sold me. I mean, just the art design of this movie alone, the movie is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And, even a trash planet, they managed to make look cool. Mm-hmm. And that, you can't just do that. That takes some skill. So I was just looking forward to it because I had grown to be a fan of the Thor character through the other movies, even though his sequel wasn't that great. But, mm-hmm. Anytime I can watch Cate Blanchett vamp it up on screen, I'll do it.
I was going to say, looking at the cast, I mean, you can't go wrong with any of the people involved in the movie. I mean, you have the usual cast of characters, from Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, of course, but you have Jeff Goldblum, of course, coming in as the Grand Master. I mean, when you're throwing Jeff Goldblum in anything, you can't go wrong with him. Were you expecting something, were you expecting this to be as good as it was with the people they had on tap for this film, Chris?
I mean, you already have a lot of reliable characters with Loki and Heimdall, and Goldblum is, he's always just going to be Goldblum, so I knew what we were going to get with him. But I think the big surprise to me was Valkyrie. Tessa Thompson just knocked this movie out of the freaking park, mm-hmm. and like, she honestly might have been my favorite part of the entire movie, just because she was so different from any of the other characters we'd seen in the MCU up to this point. And, it's
it's just refreshing when they're able to take a character that very few people outside of like severe comic fandom know anything about and instantly make her popular.
Yeah, she was such a great character, and I think they did a good job in this film too of introducing more characters, more than I was expecting, and all of them hit it out of the park, but specifically Valkyrie, Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. So going on to you, Jeff, what were your thoughts on the cast, and who do you think kind of stole the show, so to speak, in Ragnarok?
I once again, man, I really think that they just hit the right cast of characters, just in terms of the actors and the characters that they had surrounding them. As like everybody, all the returning characters, like Tom Hiddleston, Chris Hemsworth, everybody like that was been in the films, of course, but just introducing people when you combine a Thor storyline with one of the classic Hulk storylines, right? With like Planet Hulk. They literally injected Thor into Planet Hulk and made it a whole nother that's a storyline, if you read comics, I would definitely suggest to read, because it leads to Hulk having a son. Like it's nuts. But I would say, for me, I agree with Chris with Tessa Thompson. Like, there's been so many iterations of who Valkyrie is, and she legit made it her own character and a whole new spin on the character, where she goes from a drunk bounty hunter to the eventual point person for the Asgardian army. You know what I mean? Like it's nuts to see. It was like a coming of age story within a comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's nuts. It's just thinking about like the cast of characters around that whole planet. Like everybody that was with them. It's like everybody played their role well. But for me, I would say, it was definitely Tessa Thompson. Tessa Thompson, in terms of what I was expecting, I didn't know what to expect from her character. But I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Kate Blanchett that was Hela?
Yes.
Kate Blanchett, right? Yeah, she's one of the best villains that we've had.
I agree.
In the whole MCU. Like just the whole MCU. Just the fact that she had motive. She had a legit motive. She came in, she wrecked shop early, and even with the humor involved that they've injected throughout the show, throughout the movie, she was able to inject that while also being super serious, like somebody that you had to take seriously. I would have never thought that she would be the reason why Ragnarok happens. But once again, they took source material, they injected a fun spin on it, a cool spin on it, and an original spin, and it just worked.
Yeah, no, I thought she just worked on every level. And I think it's interesting, too, again, Chris, we've watched so many movies up to this point, my timeline might be off here, but is Kate Blanchett as Hela, is she one of, if not the first, major female villain that we've had in the MCU up to this point? Because I can't think of many others.
Yeah, I believe so.
And the best part is
she's the main antagonist. I believe you're right.
Yeah, the main antagonist, definitely. I'm trying to think if there was any like notable henchmen that were villains along the way, but
yeah, I can't think of that.
If you wanna technically count, oh my God, I'm dumbing out from Guardians of the Galaxy.
The Sovereign lady?
Nah. Why am I blanking on her name? Like, this is crazy.
Nebula.
I'm not even thinking about Nebula. I'm thinking Zoe Saldana's character.
Oh, Gamora.
Gamora. Thank you. I had a mental block that was pissing me off. Like this, that's like one of those things where you get it and it's like I just don't know. But I thought that she was kind of like she linked up with them at the end, but these were like all on a minor level. I think Hela was the first major female villain that they had. Like where she was the main antagonist. Yep. Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she might be. And the best part is, like you said, Jeff, I completely agree. She probably is, if not one of the best MCU villains that they've ever done. And that's encompassing a lot of ground there because they've had a lot of movies, a lot of villains. And she definitely comes close to leading that list. But back to Tessa Thompson, as you guys were talking about, she kind of seems to replace Natalie Portman as Jane Foster in the movie, who we saw in the first two movies. They kind of hinted at dissension being there between Jane and Thor. It seems like it's a cop-out in these Marvel movies. If they don't have the women re-sign, like Gwyneth Paltrow, I mean, she ended up coming back for Homecoming, but they were teasing in Civil War, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, Chris, that they were saying, oh, you know, her and Tony are having problems, and then she ended up coming back for the film, so they're like back together again. She did not come back, Natalie Portman, that is. I mean, obviously she is now for Thor Love and Thunder in a couple of years, but for this film, she was not here. So Jeff, I'll start with you. Do you think that Tessa Thompson just kind of took that role that Portman left behind and just made it 10 times better? Because they're not really love interests. I think some people kind of had the idea that maybe that she'll be the new love interest. That's, you know, the farthest thing from the case.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think, you know what, I think ideally, especially for Marvel, they didn't really have to fill Natalie Portman's role.
Okay.
They didn't really have to fill that gap left because Valkyrie is like her own thing. She's more of like a peer to Thor than a love interest. I think in terms of a main female protagonist that's attached to Thor, yeah. But Valkyrie is literally her whole other character. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's coming back, Natalie Portman, she's gonna have her own, if they do like the female Thor angle, she's gonna have her whole other story arc to deal with. So she's literally they did it in the best way possible, where they injected somebody to fill the role in terms of who are we going to attach as a strong female character next to Thor, but while still leaving the opportunity to add onto it if she came back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the best. I think this was the best case scenario for them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've told Chris before here on the show, one of my biggest pet peeves about the movies, at least early on, or the early, the Hulk movie, Iron Man, Captain America, they're all very good movies, if not great movies, but it seemed like we always had the superhero and then like the obligatory love interest. And some of them they brought back, some of them they didn't, like Betty Ross from Hulk, we never saw again. Obviously, Jane Foster is coming back for the next Thor one, but she wasn't here. Pepper is kind of the only one that really stuck around aside from Peggy, who is probably the best, main love interest they've had in the MCU. But I like that. I like the fact that this movie, I mean, the next movie is literally called Love and Thunder, but with this movie anyway, I thought they did a great job of not, kind of falling into those same tropes of like, oh, he's going to fall in love with this, with this character or that character or whatever, and kind of focus on a different story in regards to Asgard and everything else going on here. What about you, Chris, with the role that Thompson played replacing Natalie Portman in this movie? Did you like the fact they didn't kind of go down the same road of Thor finding a new love or whatever?
Well, apparently there's a deleted scene where you see a woman leaving Valkyrie's quarters before Thor shows up, so she was supposed to be a bisexual character, and I think they just cut that at the end. So I don't think she was ever really intended to be a love interest, even though they showed like one small moment of possible sexual tension. It seemed more to me like they were bringing her in solely for the fact that she's supposed to be a badass character. And one of my favorite parts of the movie is how Thor kind of marks out over finding out who she is. Like he all of a sudden he turns into a fanboy for a minute, and he's like, "Oh my god, you're a Valkyrie!" And like freaks out when he sees her sword at the apartment and stuff. And like, I just like those little details, because Thor is the guy that everybody else was marking out over in the first movie, like, oh my god, it's Thor. And now he's the one who's like, oh my god, I looked up to you guys when I was a kid. Like, I love how he's like, I wanted to be a Valkyrie until I found out they were all women. Like, that was such a good line. But yeah, she does a great job in this movie, and I'm glad that they didn't feel the need to just wedge in another romance with her, and that they've just made her like her own individual character who now is essentially the new king of Asgard. So from what I've heard, the next Thor movie, like, she will be a heavy focus of that story as well. So it's going to have a couple of different storylines going on, and I'm very excited to see what they do with her character, because I felt like she could have been used a little bit better in the last two Avengers movies. Like, she's basically there just to be a gatekeeper for Thor in the beginning, and then she shows up at the end and has a badass scene where she takes down one of those giant Chitauri creatures. But yeah, I wish she would have been in a little bit more of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't even think she was in Infinity War, right? She was just in Endgame?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they kind of make you think that she may have died on the ship at the beginning of Infinity War. Obviously, she didn't. I think the directors confirmed that, and that she had a much bigger role in comparison to that in Endgame. But I agree. I'm looking forward to what she does in the next Thor installment in a couple of years. I'll start with you, Chris. Did you like the Doctor Strange cameo? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but the segue from Doctor Strange, that post-credit scene, and the role, the very minor role that he had in this film, seeing that they're in New York City for that, one scene early on.
I did, and the main reason I liked it was because it was clear that they finally understood the Doctor Strange character a little better than they did when they made the first movie. So when you see him interacting with Thor, like, he's the more confident, I'm already Doctor Strange, not the student anymore. So yeah, it was very interesting to see that, and I'm glad they used like the exact same scene with that moment.
Yep.
So it actually connected to the next movie. But yeah, I liked their little interaction, and I thought it was kind of funny how we end up seeing Doctor Strange like own Loki a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was great. And then you just see him fall down from the sky, and he's like, I've been falling for 30 minutes. I thought that was great. What were your thoughts?
I mean,
or go ahead, Chris.
They don't really explain the difference between the magic that Loki uses and the magic that Doctor Strange uses, but like, in the grand scheme of things, Doctor Strange outstrips Loki's magic ability by a million. Like,
yeah,
Loki might be, a trickster, basically, which is he's the trickster god. But yeah, Doctor Strange is like essentially the king of magic as far as the movies are concerned right now. Yeah, no, I thought that little interaction, although it was short-lived, was really well done. What about you, Jeff? What were your thoughts on the minor inclusion of Doctor Strange in the film?
I thought it worked well. It was a great way to get them to find where Odin was. And then on top of it, I agree with Chris that they definitely captured the essence of Doctor Strange, because he's a dick. Doctor Strange is a dick, and he does funny shit, like the fact that he kept jump cutting to different parts of the Sanctorum while Thor couldn't even get a footing, and he's like, "Yo, can you stop? Like, can you stop doing that?" And it's just hilarious that it's jarring to the viewer, but it's like, imagine how Thor feels. Like he's like his meat is spilling just because he keeps jump cutting, moving around, and it's like for Doctor Strange, this is regular. He's probably part of it is after the first couple, he probably did it to fuck with Thor, but this is just how he moves. He's one with the magic, and it's the same way how instead of, if you have an Xbox, you may use the voice activation instead of using your remote. It's just what it is. That's how he is with his magic. And even when he faced Loki, he didn't even feel. You could tell that he wasn't even intimidated. Like, he's at the point where he's the legit Sorcerer Supreme. So when when you're in his house, you're literally it's like the ultimate home court advantage. Yeah. And he just, the way he just kicks them out when Loki's ready to fight him, and he's just like, all right, goodbye. So,
yeah, just shoves the portal at him.
Right.
And then
it's irreverent.
But the part when, like, at the end when Thor calls his hammer to him and it's just breaking stuff all over Doctor Strange's house. And in Doctor Strange, you can almost tell he had this look like, you know what, this is my fault.
It's some payback, yeah.
And just the look on Thor's face, he's just like, sorry.
Yeah,
that was so good.
One of the more underrated parts of the film, I thought that was great. Again, it's only like a 5-minute scene, maybe not even if that, but it was still really well done. Jeff, I'll start with you. So I don't know what their names are. They escape me at the moment. But Thor's friends that are with him at in Thor 1, Thor 2. Two of them die in the very beginning of this movie. Literally, we see them within 10 seconds. They get killed by Hela when she arrives on Asgard. And Sif is not here either, the female friend of Thor's from the other two movies. So do you think they killed them off way too quickly? And do you know where Sif might have been? I forgot what the explanation for what that was.
I don't know if they killed them off too quickly. I think it was like one of those. It's one of those deaths that make the villain, the main antagonist, matter.
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen them across two films, and they've shown their prowess. I think they're the Warriors 3 or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So if you know them in the comics, you know they're like they're like a band of, it's like almost like the Asgardian 3 Musketeers or whatever. And the fact that Hela could pop out of nowhere and just eliminate them,
mm-hmm.
it shows this is the embodiment of Ragnarok. And even Scourge seeing her and already knowing what time it was, and just said, "Hey, I'm just a janitor. I'm cleaning up. I don't know what you're trying to do, but I'm not trying to catch a knife in my in my chest." So I think it was. I don't think it was abrupt. I feel I don't know what they would have done to survive in that moment, other than bend the knee. So I don't think it's that. Especially for what we got towards the end, it made the stakes higher.
Sure. What were your thoughts, Chris?
I mean, I liked that at least the guy's name is Hogan. He's the one who had like the longest standoff with her. He had the ball with the spikes on it.
Okay, yeah, right.
I thought his part was cool. Volstagg and Fandral were the other two guys who went down real quick. I mean, with Zachary Levi, it's like he's fine. He's Shazam now, so who cares? But yeah, I did think they were killed off quick. But like Jeff said, it establishes real quickly how dangerous she is, that she can just walk through basically the entire Asgardian army like it's nothing. So, their deaths were almost necessary for Thor to kind of move on. But with Sif, I mean, her not appearing came down to the fact that she was filming her Blind Spot TV show.
Okay.
The actual actress. The director said, like, oh, she was just off on some other mission, so she may not even be aware that all this went down, and, maybe we'll catch up with her again in the future. So she could still be out there somewhere. It'd be cool if she came back in Love and Thunder. I mean, I liked the Sif character, so I wouldn't mind seeing her. I mean, she's one of the few movie characters that actually appeared on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., too.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Interesting, yeah.
A couple times, actually.
Oh, really? Towards the end or the beginning of the show, or just overall? I
mean, the first time was in the very first season. Like, some Asgardian villain, I forget her name, escapes to Earth and starts, like, enchanting people with her voice, and Sif comes down to retrieve her. And then I think the second time she shows up is to find a Kree who is, like, he's suffering from amnesia, so he doesn't even really know he's a Kree.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that she was in the show. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, hopefully they'll bring
just
her
a
back.
very small part, yeah. Her exchanges with Coulson were great.
I think it might have been Enchantress that he was looking at that first season, if I'm not.
It might have been, but I think they called her by her regular name. I don't know if they referred to her as Enchantress. It was just like whatever her.
Oh, her real name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something very Norse sounding.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know she was in the show, but I hope they do bring her back. At least they hopefully can tie her up her character. If they don't intend to bring her back for more movies beyond the next one, hopefully we just see a quick cameo just to explain where she's been. I know you said the director said that, but like as a casual moviegoer, if you're watching the movies, of course you would have no idea about that. But hopefully they can tie up that loose end at some point. But you mentioned with Hela, though, I agree with you guys that although I thought it was a little abrupt, I mean, I didn't care personally enough about the characters where it didn't really matter too much to me that they were killed off quickly. And I completely agree that it was one of those things where she kills them quickly and it makes her matter that much more. And in wrestling terms, it kind of feels like by the end, and I'm jumping all over the place here, they kind of protect her in defeat in the sense where it's not Thor who beats her. it's Ragnarok and the fall of Asgard. It's not really Thor who puts the final blow in her whatsoever. It's Asgard falling, the whole Ragnarok thing that actually kills her or defeats her or puts her down, whatever. Did you like that? I'll start with you, Chris. Did you like the fact that they went a different route with it in defeating Hela and not having her, I don't want to say vulnerable, but they really protected her in defeat again, in wrestling terms, so to speak?
The whole Surtur thing, I kind of saw that coming as soon as he's like, go put that helmet down in the same place where we keep the exact thing that it needs in order to destroy us.
Okay.
Stupid heroes.
Like, come on. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this before. Superheroes are not meant to change the world. They're there to keep the status quo, so they need to be just as stupid as the rest of us.
That's a good point.
So, but of course, that is his master plan in the end. And I did think it was kind of cool, for one, because obviously we don't really see Hela die. We just sort of see her disappear into the craziness of what's going on. So she could always come back in the future. She could be like Loki, she could have 9 lives. So if Cate Blanchett is down to return, I'd love to see her come back. And there were even rumors that she was going to be a replacement of sorts for the embodiment of death, and there was rumors that she was going to be the one Thanos was trying to impress. Okay. Because in the comics, he doesn't want to destroy half the universe for any kind of like altruistic purposes like he does in this. Yep. He wanted to do it to impress a woman named Death, who's basically the embodiment of death with big boobs. So there was rumors that she was going to do that because bringing the embodiment of death into the MCU, it might be a little more than what they want to do. So I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see that. But yeah, bringing Surtur back was kind of cool. And I mean, Clancy Brown, the guy who does that voice, like he's such a great villain in anything he plays a bad guy in. Like, he's the bad guy in Highlander. So like, I will always watch anything with Clancy Brown.
I didn't know that's where he was from, but I know I recognize the voice though. But you did with the death thing. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but obviously they teased that in that post-credit scene from Avengers when the other had told Thanos to defeat the Avengers would be to court death, and then he has that smile, and then we never hear anything about that again. I'm sure that was more of a nod to the comics than it was like their plan to do the actual death storyline. Yeah. So maybe that would have been confusing. I don't know, but hearing that rumor for the first time from you, that sounds fucking awesome. And what they did instead was still cool, but like that would have been really cool had they brought her back for that role. What about you, Jeff? Did you like the way they kind of wrote her off, so to speak, at the end of this film?
Yeah, I love the fact that you put it in terms of wrestling, because they kept her strong. They kept Hela strong by letting her lose it that way, right? But here's the thing. Ragnarok is the main antagonist in this movie. Not really Hela. Because if you understand what Ragnarok truly is, forget anything else. If you're an Asgardian, that's the biggest villain that you can face. And anything that embodies that, the end of times, is the greatest villain. So the fact that she died or allegedly succumbed to Ragnarok, it makes sense. Because we're so focused on the right hand of Hela that you kind of forget about the left hand of Ragnarok. And then when it all comes together, you're fighting a war on multiple fronts. And that you didn't even know. So her prophecy, the prophecy of her bringing Ragnarok was only part of it. Yeah. She was like the opening, Odin dying, and then her reappearing was like the opening shot. Yeah. That brought it all down. So I don't think it's bad. In fact, it may actually help their mythos for the MCU, because Hela rules Helheim. Right? So maybe this banished her to Helheim, where she becomes Queen of the Dead.
Okay,
that's an idea. She can rule over that. So, and clearly I'm not a god, so I can't tell you how that works, right? But maybe that had to happen for her to be banished to that realm. Because from what I know, she rules, but she can't really leave like that
Mm-hmm.
unless she finds a. You have to find a way out. But you have like the Valhalla, and then Helheim is like outside of wherever Valhalla is, and that's just the whole realm. It's like the realm of it's not where Surtur is from. And I just played God of War 2. I always forget my realms, but Muspelheim, right?
Okay.
So it's not Muspelheim, where all the ash. It's like Helheim and like Niflheim. It's like combined. That's what hell is for them. So maybe she is there now, ruling over a kingdom that she wanted to rule over anyway.
Okay.
She wanted to be a queen, so maybe she becomes queen of the dead. There's an easy way to make that happen because nobody would know unless you die, right? No, you wouldn't know where she is now unless you were dead and banished to that realm. So that's something that they could probably do.
That would be sick. Now I would be disappointed if they don't do that storyline.
Yeah, it's like give me that movie. Give me the movie of Hela taking over hell. Like I want to see that.
It's the same thing I say. Like when we talk about booking, just because it's not the way you would have booked it doesn't mean that it's the bad booking.
Exactly.
Right? But it would be dope. But hopefully, if they bring her back, they bring her back in some cool way. Yeah. I'd love to see it. Yeah. I'd love to see it. Though.
I think that'd be sick. I don't know. With everyone they're bringing back for Thor Love and Thunder, I'm not sure if they would have any plans to do that there, but do you think that might work as like a Disney Plus movie show or something like that down the road, maybe?
Yeah, why not? They're going to need the content.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're already doing enough stuff as it. I would much rather see that. And hey, listen, no disrespect to Wanda and Vision, but I would much rather see that than Wanda and Vision or a Hawkeye show, which are all good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that is a lot.
You know
more
how
promising.
they could use her is I know that they already had a version of Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there were plans for a show on Hulu that got canceled, but I know Kevin Feige has said like at some point we're going to use Ghost Rider again, and it'll probably be the version Nicolas Cage originally played, just not with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, like, his character is all over the map with that stuff. Like, she could very well come back in some form through something he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an idea, too.
Yeah, like, there's a million different ways that they could use that character down the line, and I would love to see it, because Cate Blanchett's a great actress, and anytime they can use her in a movie, I'm sure she would love another big paycheck.
Are you telling me, Chris, that you don't want to see a big Cate Blanchett, Nicolas Cage team-up movie?
No, I mean, as much as I love Nicolas Cage's insanity, keep him away from the MCU.
Isn't he? Oh, I was going to say, isn't he working on something else right now? But I think it's the Tiger King movie. That's what he was casted for recently, I think.
Well, Disney announced National Treasure 3 as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Right, yeah. Hey, listen, I love those movies. That's a guilty pleasure of mine. I thoroughly enjoy National Treasure 1 and 2, so I'm all for National Treasure 3.
I've learned that every decade or so, like, a new generation has their Indiana Jones, and for when I was a kid, Indiana Jones was the shit. And then the next generation had the Mummy movies. And then the National Treasure movies sort of became that for the following generation. And, they're entertaining for what they are. They're popcorn action movies.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a good point. I was born in 95.
If you look deeply into the so-called history of the movie, you'll find that it's all fabricated and none of it's real. It's just like the Da Vinci Code. Like, none of that stuff is true. It's just... It's all made up for the story.
Wait, you telling me that I can't just walk in and just grab the Declaration of Independence that easily?
Right.
The movies are enjoyable, though. I was kind of in that generation where I think the Mummies came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I was born in 95, so I was still young. I enjoyed those movies, but National Treasure was I was maybe 10 to 12 or something at that point when that movie came out. They're all good movies, and Indiana Jones, you can't go wrong with either. But anyway, back to Thor Ragnarok here. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys, we're all over the map here with, Hela and Ragnarok as the two top villains of this film. Not really a main villain, but just a kind of a dick side character, that being the Grandmaster, Jeff Goldblum. I absolutely love the character of the Grandmaster, and I really hope we get to see him again. I'm really happy he didn't die here. The whole planet of Scar is great. The colors, as you mentioned earlier, Chris, and just the whole vibe of the film is great. I love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory inspired scene where he's going through, and then he thinks he's like going super quick on like a roller coaster ride, and then he's just sitting there screaming before the Grand Master approaches him. That was great. Where he kind of jokes about not knowing how old he is. That was hilarious too. Just there's a lot of like great one-liners where he doesn't want to say the word slave either, and then I forgot who the name of the woman was, like his second, his right hand.
Topaz.
Is that her name?
Topaz, yeah.
And she says
like,
they're prisoners with jobs.
Yeah. Prisoners with jobs.
He's so stupid. What were you going to say, Chris?
Topaz is like, I had read somewhere, like, she is something completely different in the comics, and Taika Waititi just liked the name Topaz, and he's worked with that actress, like, a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. So he just wrote that role for her to just be, like, the jerk right-hand man for the Grand Master just because he wanted to work with her again. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, I thought the small role that she played was great too. Literally everyone on the planet is great. Her, Grand Master, Korg as well, who's obviously one of the good guys, but I thought he was hilarious. His kind of, no pun intended, his kind of stone-faced humor and whatever. Kind of like Drax in a way. I think we need a Korg-Drax crossover at some point. And if we get, Thor with the Guardians coming out of Avengers Endgame, I think that might still be possible eventually. But Jeff, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the Grand Master, Jeff Goldblum playing that role, and every other, the comedic effects and comedic aspects of the Scar Planet?
The Scar that I knew from the comics is totally different than the one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Because it's two different themes, right? It's two different feelings. Like, Scar is a war planet. It's a war planet. Like, there's a legit war going on for almost like a civil war of the whole planet. This Scar is a garbage planet where you get arena level battles, right? And there's just the humor of it all. It just works, man. And it's just it gets more absurd by the scene, but in the best way possible. Like even Jeff Goldblum is just he. What else can you say about him? He just kills. He kills a lot of his roles, and in the Grandmaster, you could tell he could be one of those recurring characters, especially like if you put him in Guardians, and they go to like a random planet where he's organizing battles and stuff like that. I could see something to that effect. He almost reminds me of a comic villain called Arcade from Marvel. Where his whole thing, or even Mojo from the X-Men, who has the whole Mojo world where his whole world is based on reality TV. Like the whole planet is just for his entertainment, and he's based on ratings, and he creates beings and captures others to fight against each other and puts them in reality TV show type situation, which is actually like ahead of those type of stories, like ahead of its time back then. But yeah. I thought I really like Korg too, and the fact that was Taika voicing him, it's just hilarious. Like he injects himself into cool roles in his own movies where it doesn't seem like gratuitous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just thought that everything hit, and it just that cast just felt like they were a TV cast that's been together for years.
Yeah.
The
just worked,
chemistry between them, it just worked in that way. Maybe they've been in other things together, like some people work with first person here, this person for that person there. But for everybody to click on screen in that way, that type of chemistry, the chemistry that pops off the screen, to where if I saw them having a conversation outside of work, outside of acting, they would seem like the best of friends.
Yeah.
Because the discussion, the dialogue is natural. They react to each other in normal ways, like realistic ways. I that's one of the things that grabbed me about that whole scene. Like, that was a great transition away from Ragnarok. It was like almost like a comedic interlude that lasted a whole act. And I love it.
Yeah. I totally agree. What were your thoughts on Scar, Chris, and the fact that it was different than it was in the comics and how they kind of turned it into their own thing for this film?
I mean, it would have been almost impossible to adapt what they did in the comics to the way the MCU is right now. So I thought that the approach that they used was great. I liked the whole Sakaar sequence. I loved the little reference to Beta Ray Bill with the statue heads on the big building.
Mm-hmm.
Because Beta Ray Bill is a super interesting character that I really hope we get to at some point. He's basically like Thor with a horse head. It's hard to explain any harder than that, but yeah, it was a great little section of the movie, and it also was just an awesome way for them to bring Hulk back into things, because they'd really just left it open at the end of Ultron, like what happened to him, and they're still kind of skipping around, like how did the Quinjet get to Sakaar? Who cares? Like they didn't really address it at all, and in the end they don't need to, but yeah, the whole section there was great, and it really just established the tone for the rest of the movie. And of course, you've got Stan Lee's funny little cameo as the guy who cuts Thor's hair off.
Yeah.
And I love that they actually turned that character into an action figure as like a tribute to him.
Well, quick question on that for both of you guys. Chris, I'll start with you. Do you prefer Thor with the long hair or the short hair that we saw in this film?
I really don't have a preference. I mean, obviously, the Thor you see in most media has long hair. Like every video game shows him with long hair. All the comics pretty much do. But at the same time, any excuse to not use a wig in a movie is probably good, because the first movie, it's pretty clear that that's not his hair. So yeah, I thought it was just a fun little way to basically be like, we're taking away everything that makes Thor Thor. He doesn't have his hammer, he doesn't have his hair, he doesn't have his friends. He's all alone on this weird planet, and we need to prove that all of those things didn't matter and that he is still Thor. And they managed to do that. Yeah.
No, they definitely did, and I thought they did a great job of, as we kind of talked about earlier, evolving that character and giving him new tools to play with, so to speak, and actually by taking some of his stuff away, including the hair, the friends, the hammer, and everything else that you mentioned, Chris. Do you have a preference, Jeff, between the long-haired Thor and the short-haired Thor?
No, I like the transition between long and short, especially the reasons why his hair got cut. Mm-hmm. He was stripped, just like Chris said. He was stripped of everything that outwardly made Thor Thor.
Yeah. Yeah,
and you know, it's similar to the story of Samson, where he gets his hair cut and he loses his power, but Thor figures out this is just cosmetic, and who I am is something new, something else. So I like Thor with the short hair. I do agree with the whole wig thing. I think it's just hilarious that Arrow had that thing too with wigs.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
And it was just comical. Like at this point, it was like I felt as if the costume team and everybody, they just went with it. Like they know we have horrible wigs, so now you're just gonna see horrible wigs throughout. And it's just gonna be a part of our show, which is hilarious. But
I'm so happy you brought up Arrow, because that is like that wig that they had on Amell for the first few seasons was so bad. Man. And they finally get a good wig in the last season where they actually have him have long hair. Mm-hmm. And he only has it for like a few episodes. It's like, right. Jesus Christ, come on.
It took them like 7-8 seasons, but they got it right. But I just felt like it was hilarious, right? But for movies, you want to make it as realistic as possible. And I think the long hair was fine in this movie, but yeah, in terms of preference, I really don't have a preference. Reading the Thor comics, I've seen all shades and looks that Thor is given: one eye, two eye, one arm, two arms, long hair, short hair, beard, goatee. You know, he's had a whole bunch of looks. Mm-hmm. So I like to see the change of pace. It's refreshing to see a different type of Thor, because as his character evolves, he should evolve too.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the exact same thing in terms of it just being refreshing. It's a nice change of pace from what we saw, at least from the first two films. It's just a completely different Thor in like the best way possible. And everyone has their own preferences, but I think the Thor that we see in this film is just great, very entertaining, just kind of a signal of change as you guys were talking about. Final few questions for you guys as we wind down here. We talked about Thor. Jeff, what about Hulk? Did you think this was kind of the peak of the Hulk character? Because some people don't really like what they did with Hulk in the Infinity War Endgame movies. Before this, he was fine. Do you think this is the best version of Hulk that we've seen so far, or were you not a fan of the fact that he talked a lot in this movie?
I liked Professor Hulk in Endgame.
Okay.
I liked seeing Professor Hulk because it's just another iteration of who he was. But if you talk about what was his major moment, I think it is Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. I think it's Ragnarok. You could talk about the first Avengers when he slams up Loki. That was classic. But in terms of showing an evolution of his character and just going through the different emotions of complete rage to sadness to wanting to be vindicated for a lot of the things that had happened and him appearing on that planet. Because you gotta remember, he was jettisoned from Earth by his friends. So it's a lot to take in with him. And I thought that him and Thor as a team, they just built off each other well. They played off each other well. And just for everything from the initial fight to getting the explanations to getting off the planet, I thought everything involved with him and being a part of the story, that was Hulk's best moment to me.
Yeah, I enjoyed the evolution with him here just because we don't really get to hear too much from him or Bruce Banner in the other movies, the Avengers movies. This really did feel like the solo film that we never got from him after the '08 movie. I mean, again, he's been in the Avengers movies, but this was really like the big team-up movie that we never got to see involving, specifically with Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, because obviously the first one was not him, and we've only seen him in the Avengers movies up to this point, so I thought he was great in this movie as well. What about you, Chris? What were your thoughts on the Hulk in Ragnarok?
I mean, I liked the evolution of it. At some point, they were going to need the character to start talking, and that is something that, naturally progressed in the comics, and, they may have yada-yada'd over his transition into Professor Hulk in Endgame, but it wouldn't have been that interesting of a story to watch that anyway, so I'm fine with them skipping over those details, but I loved the way he was played in this movie. I mean, the line in the trailer that I think that sold everybody is when Thor sees him for the first time and is like, yes, and then he looks at the Grandmaster, he's like, I know him, he's a friend from work. Like, yeah. Everybody, that line had everybody in the theater that I was in, like, dying, even though we'd all seen it in the trailer a million times.
Right.
Like, and, that's the sign of just lovable characters, but yeah, Hulk was great in this movie, and I felt like Mark Ruffalo played the comedic notes really, really well. And it was just nice to see him have more of a major role in a movie because he's never going to be the main guy in one of the Avengers movies. Those were always like Cap and Iron Man's movies. Mm-hmm. And the rights are still tied up with, I believe, Paramount with the rights to a solo Hulk movie. So this was
Universal.
Or Universal.
It might be, yeah, I think it's Universal, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the only way they could tell the Planet Hulk story without making it a solo movie that they'd have to do with Universal, which Universal might not want to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a whole big mess with all the rights stuff to that, but I loved the way that they used him in this, and I like that it was him who sort of like, they shoved him back to Earth at the beginning of Infinity War. Yep. So like getting him on the ship, like it was just a smart way to bring him back into the fold of everything happening on Earth was through Thor.
Yeah.
And those two have been linked forever. I mean, the original Thor made for TV movies, there was one or two that had a version, or the original Hulk made for TV movies, there was a version of Thor in there. Like they've been kind of a buddy team in different forms of media for a little while, and it's sort of because they're two of the most powerful characters you could imagine, but somehow they balance each other out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they just have great chemistry, and I think they really took this movie to the next level with what they did here. And hopefully we see more of the kind of the buddy cop type thing with them in another installment, whether it be, Love and Thunder or another Avengers movie down the road. I think that would be great. Real quick, 2 cents on the film overall, Chris, for Ragnarok. Where does it rank for you in the MCU?
I mean, Ragnarok is definitely, it's up there in the top 5. It's one of the most just entertaining movies from start to finish in the entire MCU, and I felt like every character that they introduced as a new character felt like a fully formed character by the end of the movie. And it had some of the best cameos too. Like, we didn't even talk about the fact that you have Luke Hemsworth playing Thor, Matt Damon playing Loki,
of course,
and Sam Neill playing Odin in this stage play that Loki has made to make him look good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that whole sequence was just incredible. And I mean, it'd be weird if Matt Damon ever played anybody else in the MCU now, but it was such a funny way to use him. And the fact that they actually had Hemsworth's real brother be the one playing him just cracked me up. But yeah, this whole movie from start to finish was really great. And I wish they would have gone into the fact that the Grand Master and the Collector are related. They're both part of a race called the Elders.
Didn't know that. Interesting. I was going to say they're very similar. I didn't know they were related, though.
Sometimes they're portrayed as brothers, sometimes they're not. But they're supposed to be part of one of the oldest races in the universe, and they're like some of the last of their kind. And they just didn't even acknowledge that one bit. And I would love it if at some point in the future we got to see those two characters, even in a post-credit sequence. Just, Guardians 3 post-credit sequence is just the two of them having a martini together or something. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Does it rank high in the MCU for you, Chris?
Absolutely. It's definitely a top 5. I'm not sure where it falls because, it's depending on the day of the week will depend on which movie I put at number 1. But this is one of those ones that's like, it's in that rotation. It's very high up on the list for sure.
I agree. It's a top 5. We'll talk about where we rank these movies in another episode down the road. But you, Jeff, overall thoughts on Ragnarok, and where does this rank in the MCU for you?
By far my favorite in the Thor series by like a country mile, a light year, whatever is longer. Right. It's definitely one of my favorites. I would say that it's also, I would put it in my top 5 also because and that's like no doubt about it. I don't know what my 5 ranking is, but I know that it's there, and it's just the right combination of humor, of action, of adventure, and of those solemn tones that they hit. It was the fact that they could inject so much comedy into an event like Ragnarok and pull it off without it being corny, without it feeling contrived, without it feeling forced in any way is a testament to Taika, the entire team, the cast, the crew, everyone. It was just fun to watch. Like, I turn it on and I just start laughing. I just start smiling. It just feels good to watch. The performances feel good. You're enthralled with the storyline. You're waiting for those comedic moments, and you're almost captivated by and shocked by the seriousness of it at times. It just I just think that they utilize the whole mythology of Asgard, the whole the storyline that they built, and that's something that's going to be probably is still more underappreciated than underrated with the MCU. The fact that this was a 10+ year undertaking of storyline connection across 22 films, unprecedented, never seen before. To where fans who watched the first Iron Man got the from the first Iron Man up until Endgame, got the ultimate payoff of the culmination of a decades-long story. And within those series, they built upon everything that they did to where, if you didn't watch some of the movies, you may not miss a lot, but it's more enriching to do so. And Thor was a perfect case in, yeah, we messed up in our second movie. Yeah, it wasn't that good, but we were able to bounce back to the point where I almost forget about Dark World because of Ragnarok. Mm. It's amazing. But yeah, man, like I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to, when you reached out, this was the one that I called out. Because I said, if there's any movie from the MCU that I could rewatch and not have any qualms about, like none, it's Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. Now, I'm very happy you did join us, dude. This has been awesome. A lot of fun talking about Thor Ragnarok.
Wait, there's one thing we got to talk about that we didn't get to talk about.
What?
And I'll ask you two about this. How do you think they handled Loki's face turn in this movie?
I liked it just because I thought they did a good job of... He wasn't like a full-on, like, oh, we're best friends now. Like, he was still the god of mischief, tried to betray Thor at one point, and then they're kind of on the same side by the end of it. And kind of going to what Jeff said, it's not a one-movie thing, because we kind of see him starting to make that turn in the other films, as we talked about before, Chris. And I thought... I don't know if we said it about Dark World, but the first Thor is all about Loki, where it feels like it's a Loki film and not a Thor film. He kind of takes a background, kind of a background player role in this movie, but he's still great. And I thought they handled it very well to the point where what we see in Infinity War packs that much more of a punch because of the connection they had in this movie and how they kind of got on the same page. What were your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with that. And I would even say it tracks with Loki's disposition. Yep. He's a trickster. He's always a trickster. There's always an ulterior motive with Loki. Even when he doesn't know, there always is. Mm-hmm. And I think it really tracks well with him because, yeah, I can help you out. You're my brother one day, you're my adversary the other day. But either way, if Loki comes out on top, everything is fine. Mm-hmm. Everything is cool as long as Loki comes out on top. But you can also see... Because if you know the story of Loki, you know a lot of that comes from personal hurt and suffering of not feeling all the way accepted and not really being a child of Asgard and creating all this mischief because he sees Thor getting all the shine. And he's like, well, what about me? You know? Mm-hmm. And it's just in his nature to be a trickster. So, yeah, when real things are happening and he weighs the pros and cons, he'll look at it and say, all right, yeah, I think he has a heart for certain things that he cares about. And he doesn't want to see the world get decimated, partially because I'd say 25% because he cares and 75% because then where would he rule?
Yeah, yeah.
If Asgard is gone, right? Like, I can't lose my kingdom. I can't lose a potential investment. So I think it tracks well with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I wish they had talked about in this movie that, like, Kevin Feige's talked about this, but they haven't established it in the movie, and that's that Loki wasn't necessarily in full control of himself for those first couple of movies. He was under the influence of the Mind Stone and sort of being messed with and controlled by Thanos from a distance. So, like, as soon as he doesn't have the scepter anymore by the second Thor, that's when you start to see all of that starting to strip away. And even though he's still a little backstabby, he's not quite as genocidal, you know? So, yeah, I wish they would have gone into that a little bit in the movie. Like, even a throwaway line about, like, you know, ever since I got rid of that scepter, my mind has felt clear, or something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So, but yeah, I really liked that Loki had that little face turn, and at the end of the movie he proves to Thor that, like, he's actually still there. It's not just him, you know, projecting himself. And then his death actually has weight when you see it, and now we're going to get to see a different version of Loki from after the original Avengers, running around messing with time in his own Marvel series. So that's going to be great.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to that. That should be awesome, too. And you know it's a full-on face turn when he's doing Get Help with Thor, which was also one of the best parts of this film.
Even though that's right before he tries to backstab him, but, like, Thor finally sees through his shit and, like, double-crosses him
He's
first.
not an idiot, yeah.
It was so funny. And then, like, oh, I'll just put this remote over here for you, and he throws it away.
Yeah. No,
And then Korg saving him, and then Loki being like, you guys look like you need a leader. And Korg being like, oh, thank you very much. Like, it makes no sense, but it was so funny.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I loved the way they used Loki in this movie, and the fact that, like, he's almost a hero by the end of it. It felt like a journey that, even though nobody would ever actually forgive the amount of crimes that guy has committed, as a movie character, you're willing to look past some of that because you like the portrayal by the actor so much. And that's a testament to Tom Hiddleston right there. Like, if they had cast somebody else in that first Thor movie, Loki might not have been anywhere near as involved in the MCU as he has been.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, these movies, we've talked about this before, Chris, that with as much evolution as Thor has in these movies, Loki just has probably just as much, if not more, of a transformation, just because Thor's always been a good guy. It's just more where, because he realizes that Asgard isn't a place, it's a people, whatever. But Loki makes the full-on face turn from being just this hated heel from the first Thor movie and in Avengers to now being on, with the good guys by the end of this movie going into Infinity War. To the point where, like, these movies, they're called Thor, Ragnarok, Thor, Dark World, but they may as well be called Thor and Loki, because he's in every single one of them, and he's every bit as important as Thor is to the franchise. And arguably, even a better part, at least when it comes to those two first movies, Chris Hemsworth is great, but Loki really steals the show in the first two, and I thought his transformation here was awesome. The ultimate tweener, as we would say in the wrestling world,
Yeah, he's basically Randy Orton. Like, he can bounce between being a good guy and a bad guy whenever they want. I mean, he's literally a magician, so
yeah.
The RKO out of nowhere is kind of his thing too. So, but yeah, Loki's awesome.
We've done one of those articles for Bleach Report. I know I did one a long time ago. You've done your fair share as well. Tony Mango, who you had on here for the Homecoming one. We've all done articles for Bleach Report at one point or another, recasting the MCU heroes and villains as WWE wrestlers, and I think it's time we do another one of those as well.
Oh wow, yeah, that's dope.
yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, I've done a few of those for different franchises, and I forget who I would have put as Loki. I think, man, if it was like 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have said The Miz or something.
What a slap in the face now, and I love The Miz, but Randy Orton is definitely a much better comparison by today's standards. But yeah, I gotta go back and check those out.
I think I actually had Orton as Iron Man because he was like a baby. Actually, yeah, because he's a baby. He was a baby face at the time, and he was like, he's that smart-ass baby face, and that's what Tony is.
Well, I think when I had done mine, I think I had done one for the first Avengers movie that came out at this point fucking 8 years ago. I think I did one, and instead of Orton, though, I think I put John Cena as Captain America, and then I put...
Yeah, that's a gimme.
Yeah, that's a gimme, and I think I put Triple H as Thor when he was still active, whatever, and he was, that was back when he was a full-on babyface. I think I put CM Punk as Iron Man, because he was a face at the time, too, and he was kind of like that smarmy asshole,
Do you guys remember the fan campaign to get Triple H cast as Thor when this movie was first announced?
No,
That was real.
Really?
That was real. That happened. And, like, all these pictures were being circulated of him with the hammer. And they're all like, his role in Blade was terrible. He needs a better comic book movie.
Oh, God.
And this was back when Triple H, like, was kind of trying the acting thing. Like, I think he had just made The Chaperone.
Yeah, The Chaperone, yeah.
And so, yeah, there was a movement to get him cast, and I think he might have even acknowledged it on WWE television at some point, or maybe one of his DX buddies did, and like, oh, like how you didn't get the Thor role or something like that. Like, I remember something like that being said to him on television and him just laughing about it.
I know Punk said, when's your next direct DVD sequel or something like that. I remember that from 2011, which was great. But, yeah, no, maybe at some point, keep Triple H possibly as far away from the new Blade movie as possible. I don't think that movie needs Triple H, but, hey, I would love to see more WWE people in the MCU. I know we have Batista. The Rock is going to be Black Adam in the DC cinematic universe, but I think we need more, John Cena cameo at some point would be cool, but I know he's in Suicide Squad, so that's probably not going to happen. But at any rate, this has been awesome. Thoroughly enjoyed talking Ragnarok with you guys. Jeff, for you first, people can find you on all the socials at Jeff J Says. This has been awesome, dude. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I was able to chat up one of my favorite MCU movies with you, and I'm happy that you let me join you. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Maybe
of
what
course.
we'll do is we'll do an episode where we cast WWE superstars as MCU. We'll have you back.
Oh yeah, I'm down, man. 100%. I'm down.
Definitely,
All right.
definitely. We'll definitely do another episode, one of those down the road with WWE people in the MC with Jeff, and that'd be great. And Chris, people can find you on the Twitter machine as well at BR_doctor. And on the next episode, we're talking about Black Panther, so we're keeping the great movies going here. I know we just talked about Guardians, we talked about Homecoming, we talked about Ragnarok today, Black Panther, then Infinity War. We're really getting to the meat of the MCU now with some of the best movies they've ever done, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, they really started knocking it out of the park in Phase 3.
They did. It's getting good, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. But thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jeff, as always, guys. I appreciate it. Take care, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Great, thank you.
Good.
All right, thanks,
you.
guys.